Good evening, all the joinees. Thank you for joining in. Hi, this is Ashi. Welcome to NGEN Markets webinar. By the time others join in, let us have a look at today's topic. So today we'll be looking into at performance comparison, that is funds performance comparison with benchmark and peers and category average. Then we'll be looking into NGEN Fund Score and its parameters, followed by rolling return and rolling return distribution, continuing with drawdown and scenario analysis. And at the end, we'll be looking into few reporting options. And at the end, the forum will be open for a Q&A session. So now let us head towards the NGEN Markets platform. So this is the landing page of the NGEN Markets. Now let us see what are the multiple ways in which you can load a single fund for the purpose of analysis. The very first way is through the Funds tab, which is the fourth tab onto the platform. So once you move towards the Funds tab, this is basically the screener that we have provided. Now here, you can filter the funds based upon the AMC, or you can filter it based upon the categories as well. Now, as you can see that there are 4 buckets, which are basically SEBI asset classes, within which are the multiple categories. Now, there is no limit. You can load as many categories as you wish. For today's webinar, let us take small cap funds, which is from equity as an asset class. Now, within bracket, you can see that there are total 29 small cap funds. Once you click on this checkbox, all these 29 results will get loaded right here. You can narrow the list down by applying certain filters, that is, it can be minimum AUM or minimum age. Let us take minimum age as 5 and then click on apply. So this will narrow down the list. Now moving towards the topic, that is how to load a single fund analysis. For that, all you have to do is just click on that particular fund's name. For example, if I click on SBI Small Cap Fund, it will load a single fund analysis for this particular fund that I have right now selected. So this was the first way, which can be done through the Funds tab. The second way is in the Compares tab. Now, once you head towards the Compares tab, this is the landing page for that particular tab. Herein, you can conduct a detailed analysis. Now, you can add a fund by searching for it manually in this Add Security tab, or you can directly add a SEBI category from the Add Groups. Continuing with the example of small cap funds. So I'll enter small cap funds and I'll click on it, and all the 29 funds will get loaded right here, along with their NAV details as well as certain other parameters as well. Now, once this gets loaded, all you have to do is again click on that particular fund's name. Now, for example, here, if I click on Nippon India Small Cap Fund, you can see a detailed analysis for Nippon India. Now, let us see what is the third way of loading a single fund analysis. Now, this can be done by searching for that fund's name in the search bar, which is right here. So you have to just manually type in the name of that particular fund. For example, if we take Quant Small Cap Fund, I will just enter the name and I will select. Now, once you do so, you can see an analysis dedicated to Quant Small Cap Fund. On the left-hand side, you can see certain basic details like ISIN, AMFI code, asset class, and category, as well as you can see the start date and the end date. Now, there is complete flexibility. You can select your own start date and end date. Now, let us analyze this particular fund for the period of past 5 years. I will click on the word change. Here, you can custom your own date, or you can just click directly on 5 years ago. Now, once you do so, this is the analysis for the period of past 5 years. The benchmark on the right-hand side, you can see that has been selected is Nifty Small Cap 250. So our fund is compared with the benchmark, that is Nifty Small Cap 250. Now, let us say that you want to compare this particular fund with a category average as a benchmark. So for that, in the benchmark section itself, there is a sub-tab called NGEN. You just click, and then in historical SEBI category average, you just search for that particular category average. Now here the relevant one would be small cap funds. Now once you click here, you can see Once this gets loaded, the blue line, which is basically our fund, is now being compared with the category average, which is represented in the black line. And here you can see that there is a clear outperformance. Now let us move back to its original index, which is Nifty Small Cap 250. So in NSE, I'll just type Nifty Small Cap and I'll select 250. Now, once you do so, again here, the blue line, it represents our fund, whereas the black line represents our index. Here we can see that there is a clear outperformance. Also, you can see the performance statistics, which is month to date, that is from start of the month till date, that is 5th September 2024. What is the return that our fund and the benchmark has generated? Year to date is basically from start of the year till date, that is 5th September 2024. What is the return that has been generated? As well as 1 year, 3-year, and 5-year annualized return. Now let us take a look into certain parameters. First is cumulative return. Now cumulative return is basically absolute or point-to-point return. Here we can see that the cumulative return of our fund is near to about 658%, whereas benchmark has a cumulative return of 318%. So here we can see that there is a clear outperformance by our fund in comparison to the benchmark. Next is CAGR, which is basically the average rate of return that all of these funds or this particular fund is earning on an annual basis, which is since 3rd September 2019, which is basically our start date. So the CAGR of our fund is about 49%, whereas benchmark has a CAGR of about 32%. Again, the outperformance by our fund is something that we can see. Next is volatility, which is basically the measure of standard deviation. It signifies the risk. Now here we can see that benchmark is having an annual volatility of about 20%, whereas fund is having an annual volatility of about 21%, which means a bit higher than the benchmark. The next parameter is Sharpe ratio. Now, Sharpe ratio is risk-adjusted return. It tells us how well the fund is performing in comparison to the risk that is being taken. So here we can see that the Sharpe ratio of our fund is about 1.68, whereas benchmark has a Sharpe ratio of 1.18. Higher the Sharpe ratio, the better it is. So our fund is again outperforming in terms of Sharpe ratio in comparison to the benchmark. So here we can see that with a higher volatility, it is generating higher cumulative return, but also generating a higher Sharpe ratio as well. Now, next parameter is cumulative excess on benchmark, which is basically the alpha. Now here we can see that the alpha of this particular fund is 339%. Now how do you derive to this? Is basically you subtract the cumulative return of the fund with that of the benchmark, and this is how you will be able to calculate the alpha. Now the next two parameters that we'll be looking upon is the two important ratio. First is up capture ratio and second would be down capture ratio. The up capture ratio tells us how the fund was performing when the market was in bullish run. Now here the fund is having an up capture ratio of 120.07. Considering that our benchmark has an up capture ratio of 100, it indicates that if the benchmark was up by 10%, our fund, that is quant small cap fund, was up by about 12%. So higher the up capture ratio, the better it is. Now, once you click on this particular eye icon, you will be able to see a month-on-month bifurcation for the same. Now, please note in the up capture ratio, only those months would be taken under consideration wherein the benchmark was generating positive return. So, irrespective of the fund generating negative or positive return. On top, you can see the annualized return series of the upward movement. So for the fund, it is about 112.89, and for the benchmark, it is about 94.02. Now, once you divide this, it will come up to 120.07. Exactly opposite is the down capture ratio. It tells us how the fund was performing when the market was in bearish run. Now, here the down capture ratio of our fund is 79.36. Considering that the benchmark has a down capture ratio of 100, we would read this as if the benchmark was down by 10%, our fund was down by 7.9%. So lower the down capture ratio, the better it is. Once you click on this particular eye icon, again, you will be able to see a month-on-month bifurcation for the same. Again, only those months will be taken under consideration wherein the benchmark was generating negative return, irrespective of the fund generating positive or negative return. Again, on top, you will be able to see the annualized return series of the downward movement. Now here, for the benchmark, the return is negative 50.42, whereas for the fund, the negative return is about 40.02. Now, once you divide this, it will come up to 79.36. Now, let us take a look into monthly statistics. Now, here we can see that from start date till now, there were total 61 months. So, basically, from 3rd April 2019 till 5th April. From 3rd September 2019 till 5th September 2024, there were total 61 months. And out of 61 months, there were 46 such months wherein this particular fund was up, which means it was generating a positive return or return above 0%. Whereas 15 was such month wherein this particular fund was generating negative return or below 0%. The best return that it has generated in this 46 month was about 21.23%, whereas the worst return generated in this 46 month when it was up was about 0.29%. And while it was down for this 15 month, the minimum that it went down by was about 0.24%, and the maximum that it went down by was about 29.69%. Now, to plot this on chart, you can also see in which particular month it was able to generate the best return as well as the worst return. So there is this monthly chart right here. Now, all you have to do is drag. Now, it was the month of March 2020, wherein this particular fund was generating the worst return, that is basically the negative return of about 29.69%. Whereas the best return of about 21.23% was generated in the month of July 2020. And similar analysis is something that can be done on yearly statistics as well. Now next, moving on to asset allocation tab. Now within the asset allocation tab, there is a sub tab, which is basically the overview. Here you can see all the holdings of that particular fund. Now, as of now, there are total 81 holding when we talk about quant small cap fund. And this data is as of 31st August 2024. Now, once you click on this particular Excel icon, you will be able to download all the holdings of this particular fund. Next is concentration. Now, concentration basically, here you can see is equity market cap exposure, which will tell you the split in large, mid, and small cap. Now, everything other than equity will be classified as others. Now, for this particular fund, in others, the allocation is about 15.71%, whereas the maximum allocation is towards small cap funds, which is basically 66.91%, as you can see right here. Now, next in asset allocation is sector-wise allocation is something that can be seen right here. Now here you can see for finance as a sector, there is a maximum allocation of about 9.89%. Now once you click on this particular bar, you can also find the stocks in finance. So these are all the stocks in finance as well as the individual percentage-wise holding. Now once you add this, it will come up to 9.89%. Now next we'll be looking into is the peers tab. Now, this tab is used to understand how the fund is performing in comparison to its peers, as well as the category average. Now, the data that is being displayed here is static, which means that it is since the inception of the fund. So, it is not fair for the purpose of comparison. This is because all of these funds have a different start date or launch date. Now, for a fair comparison, we'll have to move towards the compare tab. So this is the fifth tab onto the platform. Now, once you move towards the compares tab, we have already loaded all the small cap fund as a SEBI category. Now, the data that you see here is since the inception of the fund. Now, let us analyze this for the period of past 3 years. For that, in the returns column, there is this setting icon. You click on the setting icon and then you can custom your own start date. So past 3 years would be 2021 and 6 September, and then you hit on go. Once you do this, you will get a prompt stating that a custom date is being selected. Now there are multiple parameters. Let us take one parameter as CAGR. As explained earlier, CAGR tells us the average rate of return that all of these funds were able to generate on an annual basis. Now, once you click on the word CAGR, it will be arranged in ascending or descending order accordingly. Now here, the third item that you can see is basically quant small cap fund. Now for past 3 years, the CAGR that quant small cap fund has generated is to an extent of 31.35%. And since inception, it has generated a CAGR of 12.69%. Similarly, if we take one more parameter as Sharpe ratio, now since inception, the Sharpe ratio generated by quant small cap fund is 0.37. Again, and explained earlier, Sharpe ratio is risk adjusted return, indicating how well the fund is performing in comparison to the risk that is being taken. So since inception, it was about 0.37. But if we take for past 3 years, the data would be, as we can see right here, is 1.12 for quant small cap fund. Now here on the extreme left hand side, you can see some color code boxes with numbers on it. Now let us understand what these numbers are and what is NGEN Fund Score and how it is useful for comparing the peers. Now as we were analyzing quant small cap fund, on top you can see a black tile which basically tells that NGEN Fund Score given to this particular fund is 5.92 out of 10. Now, once you click on that black tile, you will be able to have a detailed analysis for the same. Now, here you can see the final score, which is displayed on the platform everywhere, which is 5.92 for quant small cap fund. Now, this fund are updated on month basis, which can be seen in the blue chart right here. Now, there are two parameters that are taken under consideration when we give the NGEN Fund Score. One is qualitative and second is quantitative. Now, the qualitative parameter that is taken under consideration is age as a factor. Now, if there is a younger fund or a fund that has been recently launched, automatically a lower score would be given because that particular fund is yet to prove its performance or worth to be invested upon. And the second parameter is basically the quantitative parameter, which is combination of AUM and short, medium, long-term return and volatility. So 10% weightage is given to AUM and 90% weightage is given to this short, medium, long-term return and volatility, which is basically 1 year, 3 years, and 5 years risk-adjusted return. Please note that all these funds are comparable only on intra-category basis. That is, you cannot compare a score of small cap fund with that of a large cap. So to make the task easier, we have given the list of all the small cap funds right here. Now here we can see that the best performing fund in the small cap category is Nippon India Small Cap Fund, which is 7.62 is the rating that is being given. So accordingly, you can select your top 3 and top 5 by referring the NGEN Fund Score. Now moving on to another parameter is rollings. Now here you can see the rolling window for 260 days, 520 days, and 780 days. Now everywhere on the platform, 260 days is basically 1 year working period. Now all these boxes are completely editable. Now let us say you want to check for 4 years. So all you have to do is just multiply 260 into 4 and it will come up to 1040. And all you have to do is just enter and then click on run. Now, similarly, you can see rolling return statistics. Now, this is available on absolute basis as well as annualized basis. Now, here for 260 days, we can see that the average rolling return is about 45%, whereas the volatility is about 29%, and the highest return that is being generated is to an extent of 118%, whereas the lowest return, which is basically negative, is right here, which is 1.42%. But as you see, as the rolling period increases or the holding period increases, the negative return or the lowest return that this particular fund has generated is also positive. Now, if you want to plot this particular highest return or the lowest return, that can be done on this chart, which is right here. Now, all you have to do is just drag, and here we can see that the best return or the highest return was generated in 18th May 2021. So what does this mean is, if the investor would have invested exactly 260 days prior to this date, he would have been the luckiest, because this would have been the return that he would have received of about 118.08. Whereas let us try to plot the day where he would have been the unluckiest. Yes, so it is basically 17th October 2022. So if the investor would have stayed invested exactly 260 days prior to this particular date, he would have been the unluckiest, because he would have earned a negative return of 1.42%. Now let us have a look into return ranges. Now this is basically, it will give you an idea or probability of fund giving return in a particular range based upon the back tested data. So let us look into certain condition. Let us try to analyze what would have been the probability of this particular fund generating a negative return. So without changing the first box, I'll just change the second box and enter 0 right here. And then we'll just click outside. So what does this mean is, there is 0.67% of the probability that this particular fund will generate a negative return, which would be basically between negative 1.42% to 0%. Now let us analyze second condition depending upon the target return range. Now let us say that your client has a target return range of 15 to 40%. So you just have to enter 15 right here and 40 right here. Now once you do so, just click outside the box, and here we can see that there is 20% probability that this particular fund will generate a return between 15 to 40%. So this is the second scenario. Now let us take third scenario as basic FD rate, which is ranging from 0 to 7%. So again, we'll just edit this to 0 to 7% and check the probability of it generating a return between that particular range. Now once you do so, there is a 10% probability, 10 to 11% probability that this particular fund will generate a return which is just like basic FD rate between 0 to 7%. Now, all the data that you enter right here, the ranges that you enter right here, is something that can be seen in the bar chart as well. Now, this is for 260 days rolling window. You can change it to 520 or like 4 years as we have just entered, which is 1040. Now, next parameter that we'll be looking onto is the drawdown analysis. Now, drawdown tells us the ability of the fund to recover from the loss. So losses are inevitable, but it depends upon funds to fund how well they are able to recover from all of these losses. Now, the gray area that you see here is basically the loss period, and the white area that you see here is basically the recovery phase. Now, here you can find all the details of top 10 drawdowns. Now, there was a worst drawdown, that is a loss of 38.58%, which was between 11th Feb 2020 till 24th March 2020, wherein the NAV of this particular fund, it fell from 45.89 to 28.19. And it took 87 days to recover, which means to cross this initial NAV of 45.89. And it finally recovered on 23rd July 2020. Also, you can see the magnitude of the loss that is being given in the bar chart as well. And similarly, you can download the data for this drawdown in the Excel format. Now let us understand the scenario analysis, basically indicating how this particular fund was performing in a particular event. Now there are certain inbuilt scenario onto the platform. You can custom your own scenarios as well. Now let us add a custom scenario, that is basically the election period. So we'll enter a name, that is election 2024. And once you do this, all you have to do is just enter a start date and the end date. So it would be 1st May 2024 and end date would be around 28 June 2024. And then you just click on save custom scenario. Once you do so, it will be added right here, and then you just click on it. Now here, the black line represents our benchmark, which is basically Nifty Small Cap 250, and the blue line represents our fund, which is Quant Small Cap Fund. So here we can see that there is an underperformance of the fund in comparison to the benchmark for this particular period, that is the election period, wherein the start date was 1st May 2024 and the end date was 28th June 2024. You can see that the excess return is also negative because of the underperformance of the fund to an extent of 2.58%. Also, you can see the return and volatility of the fund and the benchmark. So during this period, the return generated by our fund was about 5.56%, whereas the benchmark was generating a return of 8%. Whereas the volatility that our fund was facing was highest, which was about 28.35%, whereas benchmark was facing a volatility of only about 20.02%. Now, this was also the time period wherein the regulatory issues or regulatory actions were being taken against quant. Now, let us have a look into certain reporting options. The very first is this PDF report, which is right here. So this is a 3-pager PDF. Now, all you have to do is just click on this PDF icon and then click on Create PDF. Now, once you do so, this is how the PDF will look like. So it comes with co-branding. On the left-hand side, instead of our company's name and logo, you would be able to see your company name and logo right here. And as you can see, this analysis is for Quant Small Cap Fund. The basic details, the asset allocation, top holding, equity market cap exposure, sector-wise exposure. Second page consisting of the performance chart and the parameters that we were looking onto, as well as the monthly statistics and yearly statistics. The third page consists of the drawdown analysis, performance in comparison to its peers, and then rolling return, rolling volatility, and last page being the disclaimer. Now, the second reporting option for a single fund level is this PPT option, which is right here. Now, again, when you click on this icon, a PPT reports get generated. All the PPTs in the platform are completely editable. So in case if you want to remove any parameter, that can be done. If you want to add any slide, that can be done as well. So this is how the PPT would look like. So this is the very first page. Second page consisting of certain basic details like holdings and sector-wise, then asset allocation, position concentration, equity, market cap exposure. Similarly, sector-wise exposure, their trend analysis based upon holdings, as well as the performance, rolling return statistics, as well as rolling volatility statistics, and drawdown. Now let us add a new slide right here for the scenario analysis that we were conducting. So for that, we'll just click on new slide and enter a master slide. Once this is done, you can take a screenshot for this particular scenario by clicking on this icon, which is right here. So once you take a screenshot, it can be inserted right on the PPT. Okay, so once this gets generated, all you have to do is head towards the presentation, insert, then you click on pictures, this device, and then you insert the scenario. So PDF remains standard, but PPTs are completely editable. It can be customized as per your own preference. So that is it for today's webinar. The forum is now open for a Q&A session.
All right, so we have one question in the chat box which says, can you explain historical and implied value at risk again? Sure, we'll go back to fund performance. So firstly, please note, VAR is the full form. It is abbreviated as value at risk. Now, what it really means is value that is invested in a particular fund, which in this case is quant, that is at risk. At risk of what? At risk of loss. In this case, in the 5-year analysis that we are doing, we can see with a 95% confidence interval, we can say that there's a 5% chance. How did we arrive at 5? That's 100 minus the confidence interval, right? That's 100 minus 95, that's 5%. There's a 5% chance that the fund, which in this case is asset, will go down or rather experience losses to an extent of negative 33.15%. On the other hand, the benchmark in the same time period of the last 5 years, the benchmark is Nifty Small Cap 250, has a value that is at risk of losing of negative 31.61%. If you want to understand this in a little better manner, what this really means is if 100 rupees is simultaneously invested in the fund as well as the benchmark, then your capital erosion from the fund will be around 33 rupees. Capital that will stay protected is about a 77 odd rupee. Sorry, 67 odd rupees. On the other hand, if it is invested in the benchmark, the capital that will stay intact, right? That is going to be around 69 odd rupees, and the value that will get eroded, that is at loss, that is going to be 31 rupees. Right? So lower the value at risk, the better is the volatility protection of the fund. Now, the difference between historical and implied is that historical value at risk considers typically the returns to arrive at these numbers, historical returns to arrive at these statistics. On the other hand, the underlying calculation for implied value at risk is the volatility of the fund as well as the benchmark. So there is no difference in the logic of interpretation. It still means, okay, lower the value at risk, the better it is, even for implied. But the underlying factor that is considered is the volatility number of the fund as well as the benchmark. Right? So this is the difference between historical value at risk and implied value at risk. So there's a question which says, do we have a ready reckoner, PDF or PPT? So do you mean user guiding, so which assists you in navigation of the platform? If that is something that you're looking forward to, we can share it across on your email. There's a user guiding that we have. That's a PDF document explaining briefly on every parameter on the tab. We can share it across with you. If you're asking about the reports, right, the PDF PPT reports that generate on a fund level analytics, so that's right there at the top. We even discussed this during the webinar. You can take either of them and the analytics gets exported into reports. PDF being standardized, PPTs being editable.
Hi, this is Arnab. Project also show the knowledge base on the main application. There's a link there, so you'll also get kind of pre-written answers to when you log in.
Sure.
On the top.
Absolutely.
There is knowledge base, so you can go through that as well if you have questions.
Right, so you can just type in, let's say you want to know about Sharpe ratio better, or you want to typically understand, different parameters. So for example, portfolio analytics, or for that matter, single fund analytics, as we were discussing right now, right? So simply click on the mutual funds tab that you see in knowledge base. You click on that, there'll be 26 pre-written articles, and then you can just read upon those. Those will definitely be available.
Hello, can I ask a question?
Yes, sure, please go ahead.
Yeah, while you were talking about the NGEN Fund Score, you said two parameters were used. One is how long the fund has been. If a fund has been relatively new, then it takes a lesser score, right? Is that what you said, correct?
Correct.
If that is the case and a new fund takes a lesser score, then how will the scoring be equal across the funds? Then it's more biased, right? Then it's not, see, like an annualized return annualizes the return for the year. This should also bring the funds to a common parameter if it's a newer fund or an older fund and then give the score. Otherwise, the score seems to be skewed, right?
Yeah, hi. So you're right, it will get skewed a bit. The only issue is that, if a particular fund has been doing quite well for 5 years, and a new fund comes and does a excellent performance for 1 year, we have to kind of treat the older fund, with some fairness, obviously. So basically, you're right, it will get skewed, and some of the newer funds will suffer in terms of their score, just because of the fact that they're new. Now, But what we've decided with this score is that if something has been running for at least 5 years, that's when it really, really gets a full consideration in terms of his return, basically.
So when one beyond 5 years, if a fund is 10 years and 8 years, is it treated the
No
same way?
difference. No difference.
So only less than 5 years is getting that.
It's slightly. So, I mean, if it's 4 years, it'll get a little bit. If it's only 1 year old, it will get a decent amount of reduction. Of course, there's no right answer to this really, but it's just different ways of how people interpret it. So this is what we've done, and we are also working on a way where you can customize the scoring methodology on your own. So we expect to release something like that in a few months. So there
Still,
you
I
can
feel that
actually.
whether a fund is new or old, based on that current comparison, it should be equalized on the platform. But anyways, thanks for the
Yeah,
clarification.
I mean, once you get the customization option, you can actually create your scores according to whatever you think is fair, basically. So you will be able to, remove that, reduction in score because of time value. You'll be able to remove that component.
Okay. And in this individual fund comparison, where can we see the NAV of the fund? I have tried sometimes searching the NAV of the fund and I cannot find the detail anywhere.
I believe in the compare section, is there an NAV column? I'm not sure. There's a price column there. Yeah, there.
I thought at least if you individually click the fund, when all details of the fund individually are there, the NAV is a basic detail that should be there.
That's available.
You mean that's it should be right on the top, 283, 47, right?
Oh,
It
it's
is there
there
on
on
the
top.
top.
Okay.
It's
On
there
top.
on the
Okay. Sorry, I missed that. Okay. Thank you so much.
No problem.
All right, there's another question in the chat box. Where can I find fund performance? Sure. So when you click on a fund, it loads in a new tab. The moment it loads in a new tab, the first tab under it, right? The fund analytics tab, the first tab at is fund performance, right? Yeah. So this is where you can see the performance of the fund with respect to the benchmark. So that's fair. Also, there's a follow-up question which asks, where can I get rolling returns and what do I interpret from that? Sure. So rolling returns speak about how consistent are the fund's returns, right? So for example, let's turn 520 and 1040 on RTPs, right? So in this case, what we are analyzing is 1 year, 2 year, and 4 year, right? 260 is 1 year, 520 is 2 years, 1040 in terms of number of days that corresponds to 4 years working days, right? Now we see as the holding period in this particular fund increases from a 1 year holding period to a 2 year and ultimately a 4 year holding period, the lowest that the fund is ever given, right, becomes positive, right? So its probability of making returns below zero practically goes down to zero, right? So if you hold on to this particular fund for a 2 year holding period, your average returns at any point of time in the last 5 years, if you hold this fund for a 2 year period, average returns from this fund is going to be 40%. That is what this average return column in rolling returns means, right? On the other hand, the lowest, the least return will be at least a 15%, right? So this is what rolling returns really means.
And how did you determine that as you passed the statement that in the last, if you take any last 5 years, then for a period of 2 years, the average return would be 40 and if low 15.36. So how did you decide that in the
Sure.
last
We
5 years?
will show you. Yeah. Oh no, okay. So for last 5 years, I'm saying that because the start date at the top is set as 2019.
Okay,
Right?
okay.
That's why I say this is, if you hold on to this particular fund for any 2 year period, that's because it's 520 in the last 5 years. You can of course choose to change it. And of course, the moment you change it, the data is going to change. So let's do it, let's say 10 years, right? Go to custom date and maybe 2014, right? Yeah, so this is 10 year. Okay, just change the benchmark, please. I think this is a Nifty small cap 250 as a benchmark launched on 1st of April 2016. Therefore, it will not
Hmm.
let you go beyond that. Just choose the
Okay.
older benchmark. Nifty 50 should do, just so that we can go back in time,
Hmm.
right? Okay, now it will go. So this is a 10-year period analysis. Go to rolling now, and just change it to annualized, please, from the drop down. Right. Now,
Okay.
if an investor stays invested for any 2-year holding period in the last
Hmm.
10 years,
10 years.
his
Okay.
average 2-year rolling return would be a 19.5%.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Got your point. So, ma'am, another question. Like you are just showing me the performance and all the
Yes.
tabs for one single fund. Let's suppose
Yes.
if I have to do a particular analysis for a particular category, let's suppose equity large cap, and
Yes.
if I have to bulk download the rolling returns or the drawdowns
Yeah.
or the asset allocation, how can I?
Yes, sure. So for that, you need to go to the compare section.
Mm-hmm.
This is the compare section. So in this case, we have loaded all the small caps. That's fine. No problem. If you require, you can load large cap or flexi cap, whatever your
Okay.
category is, directly from ad groups, right? Whichever category you want, just load it from there. Once you do that, let's say you want to run rolling returns and you want to download all the, historical rolling returns for this category. So you go to rolling tab. That's the second tab beside the main list.
Mm.
And of course, in this case, we will have to ensure that we are excluding the young funds in this
Mm.
list, right? So these are very, very young. So we'll have to remove these to at least cover the rolling window of 260, right? So let's remove everything which is less than 1 year, Rashi.
Okay.
Right. Now, the youngest fund that we have is 1.74-year-old. Now you go to rolling returns. The moment you go to rolling returns, rolling window is set as 260, which is 1 year with respect to holding period. And again, start date and date can be customized. There you can see the download icon into, Excel download icon. You
Okay.
can download that, right?
Okay,
Drawdowns again.
fine.
There's a tab
Mm.
for drawdowns right there. You can refer to it. Of course, we are working on introducing a download option here. As of now, it's not there, but you can definitely view it from here.
Okay, maybe can take a screenshot on. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Screenshot is available. Yes.
Okay. Okay, fine, ma'am. Understood. And can you please also explain me the tab of correlation? Like, how does that work?
Yes, absolutely. So,
Mm.
these are correlations on all the small cap funds, right? So, in order to
Mm-hmm.
just gain a little bit of a perspective, Ashi,
Mm-hmm.
let's add in a debt fund here. Let's add in a Sundaram liquid fund, right? So, this typically tells you what is the directional similarity between the NAVs of the funds that you have in the main list. That means if you plot the NAVs of all the small cap funds, you see they are more or less moving the same directions. That means if one fund goes up, um, the chances of other fund also going the same direction are very, very high. For example, we can just focus on that 0.95 that you see. So for example, quant small cap and Sundaram small cap and Edelweiss, the two funds that I've gotten highlighted above. If one fund, Sundaram small cap, goes up, 95% of the times, Edelweiss small caps NAV will also go up in the same direction. Also, vice versa is true. If one goes down, 95% of the times, the other one is also going down. Mind you, this does not speak about the magnitude of fall. We are not saying here if one fund falls by 1%,
Yeah,
the
yeah,
other
I
one will
understand
fall by 0.95.
correlation
Yeah,
concept. Yeah.
correct.
But
Similarly, now sorry, please go ahead.
how is it choosing these? I understand Sundaram, how it is choosing Edelweiss here? Like if you are plotting your cursor on the 0.95.
Yeah, okay. So there's a metric structure, right? It
Mm.
will show correlations between every two funds. Correct. And we have
Okay.
Edelweiss as the second, third last
Okay,
row,
okay.
right? That's why
Got that.
it gets highlighted there at the top.
Okay. Ma'am, all these bulk download can be available from the Funds tab too. Like if you have chosen compare portfolios, but in Funds tab too, I can put on I saw that
Yeah,
I
you
can
can
put the filter.
download from Funds tab. The only rider there is in the Funds
Mm.
tab, the data is always since inception, right? There is no option to change the start date. right? So
Okay.
for example, you want, returns, CAGR returns of all of these small cap funds for the last 3 years, right? You can change the start date only in the compare section. That's why once
Okay,
you've changed the start date and then you download that, it will make sense because it's a fair comparison for the last 3 years. In the fund section, if you download, that will be since inception data, right?
Okay,
Also,
fine, ma'am.
correlations, all of those details will not be available in the fund section. Those are available for analytics, right? So that is available in the compare section only.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Thank you.
No problem. Yeah. Any more questions? Please let us know. All right, if there are no more questions, Ashi, we can close for today.
Thank you everyone for joining in. You can visit our YouTube channel and find a dedicated webinar playlist that is created. So as of now, there are 126 videos, and today's video will be released by next week. Thank you everyone and happy weekend.